Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Nur Munawwarah binti Muhammad Asnan. So this is our presentation for subject Sport Biomechanics, and our title for this assignment is comparing between a professional athlete and novice athlete in sport for volleyball sports. So let me introduce my group members. First is Amirul Adri bin Zul Adnan. Second is Nur Zahira binti Zamani. Third is Nur Fazila binti Arnett. And lastly, we have Nurul Ashikin binti Khairuddin. So let's start our presentation. So now we move to the introduction. So first is volleyball. Volleyball was initiated by William J. Morgan in 1895, and it originally called mintonette, and then it changed to a new name, which is volleyball. And volleyball joined to Olympic Games in 1964, and volleyball also is the first sport teams that have women teams and men teams. Alright, there are a lot of techniques or skills in the volleyballs, and spike skill is the crucial or the important skill in the volleyballs because it primary tools to scoring, and the success or failure of spike impact to the game, because of if the spiker of the team unable to spike well during the match, it will impact to the team's ability to attack opponent.
Okay, now we move to the movement of the spike skill. In this movement of the spike skill, we have 5 phase. Okay, this one is the first phase, which is approach phase. So this phase procedure is critical since it involves most muscle and joint in order to acquire beneficial momentum, which represent the mass velocity paradigm. So the spiker should move away from the net in order to use as many steps of the approach pattern as possible to create high forward speed. So the body will gather the momentum as it prepares to leave the ground. So in order to create the most potential force during this phase, it is important that the arm motion leading up to the spike to be performed correctly. Okay, the second phase is take-off phase, which is the kinetic action here is primarily concerned with vertical momentum since the player is required to swing enough to create a high jump. So, the spiker need to lower their body to transfer the force of the leap to their calf muscles, so which are responsible for the vertical momentum extension that occurs in the following phase of the jump. So most players use the 3-step approach because they need to react quickly. So, but it depends on how well they can coordinate their arms during the approach phase. The next phase is the arm cooking phase. So the momentum is transmit down the arm when the proximal part of the arm are accelerate and then stop. So resulting in a high velocity at the end point. So the spiker will open his shoulder to bring the elbow back to give a good way of hitting the ball. So the snap of the whip begin with the shoulder, and the striking shoulder is distant from the shoulder due to the body torque caused by the grounded foot. So as a consequences, the proximal part of the arm will accelerate. We go to the contact phase. So this phase is also primarily focused on the movement of your shoulder and your elbow to contact with the ball. So to perform the top spin on the ball, you need to swing hard before it reach your hand and then snap your wrist. So as the strike phase is mostly about making contact with the ball, It is very important to use the wrist and your shoulder joints. Next is the last phase, which is follow through phase. So the follow through phase should be natural since the gravity control the way the player ball should go. And then, if a player is consistent in his or her swing and contact with the ball, so the ball will flight path will be virtually unaffected. So the hitter need to modify their approach to the net such that the ball crosses without touching it. Okay, the muscles involved in spike skill is so this is all the primary muscles. So the first one is um, quadricep, abdominal muscle, bicep, forearms, deltoid, tricep, latissimus dorsi, gluteus, hamstring, and calf. So, quadricep is the primary muscle that produces most of force for motion. So, this muscle will be used for accelerating you in stepping forward or backward and jumping. So, the next one is gluteus maximus and gluteus medius. So, that will help your hip moving forward to lunge or jump and for stabilization of your hip and your knees. And then we go for the hamstring. Hamstring will extend the hip and to flex your knee. And then the next one is the calf. Calf, we use two, which is gastrocnemius and soleus. So gastrocnemius is this muscle is important muscle for jumping, and then soleus is to help you to move around the core. And then we go to the abdominal muscle that will help resist extension when you rotate your core for serving and hitting, and also stabilize your spine during jump. And we go to the latissimus dorsi. The lat muscle will assist in some stabilization and creating rotational power in your trunk. And then we go to the deltoid that will help your shoulder abduction, flexion, and extension. And next one is the pectoralis major, used when you need to bring your arms together to dig or set the ball, as well as down to hit. Next one is tricep. Tricep, when you do explosively for hitting the ball. And then the last one, we will do bicep because bicep is to flex the elbow and your shoulder. Okay, this is the joint that involved during spike skill. The first one is wrist, elbow, shoulder, hip, knee, and lastly is ankle. So the ankle joint is a diarosis joint, which is synovial, condyloid, and biaxial. So it makes movements such as flexion, extension, and circumduction. So the volleyball spike happen in the sagittal plane, and along with bilateral axis. So the elbow is a diateris with a synovial hinge, but it only move in one direction. Its action are only flexion and extension. So in the shoulder, the joint is classified as a diarosis joint, uh, which synovial ball and socket joint, and it is in the tracheal section because it facilitates the movement in all directions and has a wide range of motion. Multi-axial movement is highly advantageous in activities such as volleyball spike. So the movement it create are flexion, extension, adduction, and rotation. Okay, this is the bone involvement. The first one is radius and ulna, carpals and phalanges, humerus, femur, tibia, fibula, patella, pelvic girdle, thoracic, and scapula. Okay, the volleyball is a sport in which participants engage a lot of their bones, since it is a highly intense activity that requires the body to move, turn, twist, and bend and stretch.
Next is task analysis. We have to select two players that involved in volleyball sport. One a professional and the other one is a novice athlete. So they need to perform an attacking skill in volleyball, which is a spike. Then we will record the video of the player doing the skills. From the video, we try to analyze and compare these two players' difference in spike. We are focusing on the technique that they apply during the spike. So in spike, we have two types of motion, which is linear motion and angular motion. So first, let's see the linear motion. Linear motion is when the person run away from the ball in a straight line and all bodily components move at the same speed. The straight line motion is when all bodily parts move in the same direction at the same times. There is a motion called rectilinear motion, as we can see in the pictures, which is another name of the straight line motion. Next is the linear motion happen in a preparatory phase of a volleyball spike. The point move in a straight path. So when the athlete threw the ball into the sky, the ball will have a curve. It's called as a curvilinear motion. So the next motion is angular motion. As you can see in the pictures, angular motion includes a subject, spike, and the ball traveling to the opponent court and a backswing. And in a spike, the arm rotates along an internal axis of rotation at the shoulder joints, while the ball travels in a straight line to the opponent court. Lever system. So actually in volleyball, we have two types of level system, which is the second level system and the third level system, but mostly in spike we use the third level system. So let's see for the second level system first. So resistance is between the force and fulcrum is a second class level. As a volleyball player approach the net, the feet swing upwards and then for a second the body is on the tiptoe, raising weight from the heels. The length of the foot is lever the arms, the ball of the foot is the fulcrums, and the calf muscle give the force. As you can see in the picture, this is the third level system. So let's see, in the spike, the player arm is used as a third level class. The goal to make speed and make it fast as soon as possible. The force is put between the load and the fulcrum in a third class lever. Muscle and bones works together to make lever in the body, and when the spiker hits the balls, it's important that the arms used to spike in fully extend and the ball is in front of the player's shoulder. So we can see in the picture, the force is the load in the hand is the balls and the fulcrum at here and the load on the arms.
Okay, now we go to the kinematic analysis of spike. So let's we look at the range of motion. As we can see the video before, we see that we observe from the video that they have the differences between joint angle or angle of angle between this athlete, between novice athlete and also professional athlete. So here is the angle is important to make sure that the athlete do the correct technique while performing a spike, and it also influences the performance of athlete. And next is jump height. Alright, jump height is depend on the leg power or muscle strength from the athletes itself. Okay, so the strong power that they have, the more explosive or the high explosive movement that they can do. And next is a summation of force, or we can call it as a force of summation. It seems it demands the movement of all body segments combined together to produce one force to the ball, to hit the ball. And it is important, and the athlete need a solid muscle strength to create this force to make a better performance or a good performance. And lastly, a projectile trajectory. Alright, the motion of the ball spike to the opponent, that is a projectile trajectory. That is a trajectory, is a ball. Okay, volleyball always travels in a parabolic path while doing this spike, parabolic path, and how the ball acts is depend on the range of motion, force, angle, and height of jump as well. So I think that's all from me.
Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Nur Zahira binti Zamani, and I'm going to explain about kinetic analysis of spike in volleyball. So the first one, we have force. Force is a push or pulse that is defined by its magnitude, direction, and application point characterize force. So what is the formula of force? The formula of force is force equal to mass time acceleration. With the International System of Units, or we call SI unit, Newton. Force is generated by the volleyball's mass and acceleration when served and spiked. As a result, these two athletes, which is professional athletes and novice athletes, produce different amount of force. Professional athletes had more force than the novice athlete. Next, we move to torque. Torque, or moment of force, refer to the rotational effects created by an eccentric force. Torque is angular rotary force. Torque at the axis of rotation can increase the rotation. With the formula of torque, which is torque equal to inertia times angular acceleration with SI unit Newton meters. When the pivot point and force are further apart, which have more space, it can generate more torque, or the torque can be increases. A compensatory rotation of the lower extremity balances the forceful swinging arm to conserve angular momentum. Next, when an airborne performer's total angular momentum is zero, and a strong maneuver like a jump pass or volleyball spike is performed, angular momentum is conserved. Next, spiking the balls requires a player to move their hitting arms with high angular velocity and big angular momentum, which is counterbalanced by a rotation of their lower body that generate equal but opposite angular momentum. The next point, the two legs hip moment of inertia is larger than the single arm's shoulder moment when compared to the single arm's moment of the inertia at the shoulder. To counteract the swinging arm's angular momentum, the leg's angular velocity must be lower than the spiking arms. Next, Torque analysis examines an athlete's increasing or decreasing force. Muscles turn the axis, which is mean the muscles are responsible for the rotation of the axis. These two athletes' torque production is varies between the professional athlete and the novice athlete, and it's shown that professional generate more torque than the novice athlete. Next, we move to strengths and weaknesses. After performing a study of skills, its strengths and limitation, weaknesses can be recognized. The athlete's strengths, including the ability to educate the right and proper skills technique. For instance, we do briefly explain to the athletes the goals of the analysis and the technique of the spiking. The professional athlete has fully extended and angled his arm behind him, allowing him to strike the ball with enormous force. And in novice athlete spike, this part of assault was a weakness. And if he fully bent his arm, he will acquire a great deal more strength on his shoot, which will improve his performance. As you can see at the above picture and the below picture, the comparison. Above is the professional athlete and the below is the novice athlete, which is mean, as you can see the blue angle line, the professional has a wider and length straight the arms, which give more forceful impact to the ball and acceleration compared to the novice athlete, which he is not fully straight or lengthen his arm. How the professional athlete has extended his trunk and shoulder backward are exemplary example of the proper technique of spiking a volleyball. Next, we move to the step of maximizing skill performance. According to the analysis and results, there is a scope for further improvement in the novice skill since the professionals is improving and better. The beginner of the volleyball player or athletes need a wider range of motion and precise timing to generate accurate force. Next, he must overcome Newton's first inertia rules to jump. So long as the net force is zero, an object will stay at rest or move with constant velocity. Next point, by Newton's third law, when the arms are accelerating upward, he pushes against inferior body parts to increase flow force. Next, the ideal volleyball player has a low MBI, body mass index, because mass increasing inertia. Less inertia means the lighter of the athletes. Newton's second law states that acceleration is proportional to net force and inversely proportional to mass, and jumping high is proportional to ground force. And next, arm motion, position, trunk rotation, and flexion is all affects to the ball's weight. It is also important the angular velocity and torque, because the longer arms apply, they will giving more force. Volleyball spike attachment are arm length.
Okay, now we move to the conclusion. The ability to gather and analyze data, solve issues, and come to conclusion are known as analytical skill. We found that the technique performed the biggest role in increasing the effectiveness of spiking. And then we get to the conclusion that there are a few skill difference in our subject, like the angle at the joint in each face. And last one, in order to generate more force while hitting the ball, professional players typically have a greater angle at the joint. And by using skill analysis, we can identify our weakness in terms of muscle torque, range of motion, strength, acceleration, and drawing force.